George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Kamala Harris, she's not speaking now. The soy boys and girls, they, them of the Liberal Democratic Party are now weeping copiously. The meltdown of Liberal commentators and journalists on both sides of the Atlantic makes one glad still to be alive to see it. Some of us are not happy that Donald Trump is the President of the United States, but we are ecstatic that Kamala Harris is not. Who would have thought that enabling mass murder and genocide and laughing about it on the way out of your convention? Who would have thought that disinterring Dick Cheney, that most people thought was dead, the murderer and torturer of Iraq, parading around his progeny as the future heads of the FBI and the CIA? I'm not making any of this up. Who would have thought that that would not have worked? A human Molotov cocktail called Donald Trump has, as predicted exclusively by me on the mother of all talk shows, won by a landslide. The popular vote by millions. The Electoral College decisively. The House of Representatives and the Senate. A complete red wave has swept away the Democratic Party. And if you think I'm laughing inside, you're absolutely right. It is the mother of all talk shows. Don't miss it.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
It is an extraordinary thing to be proved right so comprehensively. The Molotov cocktail that is Donald Trump has exploded with full force in the ranks of the soy progressives, the liberals everywhere. The preferential pronouns brigade have been butchered at the butcher's block of the electorate in the United States of America. And the meltdown is spectacular. Der Spiegel, yes, Der Spiegel of Germany has anointed Ursula von der Leyen as the leader of the free world, or what's left of it, as they say. This is Trump derangement syndrome on a monumental scale. It's not that Donald Trump's policies are alien to them, certainly not Der Spiegel if you know anything about their history. It is his vulgarity, it is his roughness, it is his brutishness that is the bone that sticks in their throat. They want blood, they want war. They want the working class to be driven into the ground. They want the rich and already comfortable to be richer and more comfortable still. All the things that the Republican Party traditionally stands for. But they want it described with a certain finesse, and nowadays they want it to be painted in rainbow colors. I saw a black woman from the Democratic Party strategy group in the middle of the night on Al Jazeera saying, I need you to hear me. We consider Donald Trump to be racist, sexist, misogynist, and homophobic. This from a factotum of an administration which has murdered hundreds of thousands of women and children over the last 12 months in Gaza. They were only Arabs. How's that for racism? They were only Arab women and children. How's that for sexism and misogyny? And as to their sexual preferences, who cares? Only you, Democrats, care. The fact is, the administration of Biden and Harris, which crashed and burned through the night last night in a spectacular worthy of Elon Musk, it is over for them, as it is over for such people all over the Western world. Mark my words, only 1 in 3 British voters voted for Keir Starmer. Only 1 in 5 of all British voters voted for Keir Starmer. He'll have to sack Idi Amin Lammy, Big Dada. He'll have to dismiss him now because Britain's Foreign Secretary called the new President of the United States a supporter of the Ku Klux Klan and a Nazi. Clearly, the special relationship cannot survive it. The Rachel Maddows, the Mehdi Hassans, the liberals in the networks and in the leader columns of the fancy newspapers don't know what's hit them. And that is the problem. Their bubble, you see, is entirely sufficient for them. They feed off each other. They talk to each other. They reinforce each other's personal prejudices. They kept telling you that Kamala was the candidate for women, but most women voted Trump, and overwhelmingly so in the case of white women. They kept telling you that women in America cared more about abortion than they did about the price of milk and eggs and housing and gasoline. They really believed that. But women in America need eggs and milk more often than they need an abortion. This rabid preoccupation with liberal nostrums, with a dogma more dogmatic than any of the Holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church. The dogma of liberalism is what has done them. They don't understand that the vast majority of people out there in America, in Europe, all over the Western world, the vast majority of people don't give a toss about all that. They're interested in their lives. It's the economy, stupid. It's the culture, stupid. It's the sense of being secure and part of your own country and not despised and reviled by the people who rule you. Kamala Harris, like Hillary Clinton before her, showed it all over again and again and again. Latterly, by not showing up to her scheduled speech at Brown University, or Howard University rather, in the United States, where thousands of her supporters were waiting for her. She took to her bed like Hillary Clinton did before her. Not a good look, that, for those telling us we need a woman president. It would be marvelous to have a woman president, but not a woman president who's an idiot. That would actually set women back. That's what most women calculated. They said that Trump was a KKK member. They said that Trump was a Nazi. They said that Trump was Hitler. But his share of the vote amongst black people, amongst Latinos, amongst Asians, amongst other ethnicities has vaulted forward in the case of Latinos almost to parity. When Latinos used to vote 80 to 90% for the Democratic Party. And they thought that they could murder thousands of people, tens, scores of thousands of people in Lebanon and in Gaza, and still expect young people, much motivated by the justice of the Palestinian cause, still enthusiastically to vote for them. They thought they could get Iraqi Americans to vote for a party whose leading proponent in the last few days of the campaign was the daughter of Dick Cheney, who murdered 1 million Iraqis in 2003 and beyond. The insanity of this political class. Rory Stewart, I know, who even remembers the guy? But you'll find his books in the bookshops. You'll find him on the screen. You'll find him paid thousands of pounds as a pundit, though he's a blithering idiot as a pundit. Everything he predicts turns out to be wrong. And the war criminal, AlastairCampbell, what a gruesome twosome. They were on the television all through the night, predicting wrongly state after state after state, because these people are not journalists, they are not broadcasters, they are political activists who confuse what it is they want with what is actually going to happen, what is happening on the ground. This was, above all, a revolt of the American working class. One of the great gains of this campaign is the abandonment of this ludicrous term, middle class, to describe blue-collar union labor in the United States of America. Suddenly everyone is talking about the working class in America. It is the working class in America, of all colors, that has been peniorized, has been anathematized, slandered and smeared as ignorant, as illiterate, as lacking in the social graces, as garbage, as deplorables. It's the working class what done it for Donald Trump, and he better not disappoint them. If Donald Trump picks the monsters from the swamp like he did last time and puts them in charge of vital areas of America's national life, his administration will fail. If he genuinely puts America first, he will succeed. He will make America great again. I say this with all love to the American people. Stay home and fix house. Get your soldiers out of Syria. Get your soldiers out of Iraq. Get your materiel, men, money, and diplomatic support out of Ukraine. Get out from under the mass murderer Benjamin Netanyahu. Go home, America. I say it with love. Go home, America. Yankee, go home and fix your own country. Fix your roads. Fix your bridges. Fix your railways. Fix your housing stock. Fix the living standards of your own people. Fix the racial and other divides amongst your countrymen and women. Heal yourselves, physician, before seeking to heal the rest of us. We love you, but we don't need you. We don't want to be you. We won't agree to be ruled by you. And that's in your interest to heed this call. Heaven knows God blessed America. Heaven knows from sea to shining sea, you have been blessed with everything that nature can bestow. Use it. Use it for good, for the good of your own people. First and foremost. Put America first, Mr. Trump. Keep the neocon, reocon, retread, recycled, George Bush, warmongering, genocide-loving, Elliot Abrams, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, to the garbage can with them. Give RFK Jr. the power to tackle Big Pharma. Give TulsiGabbard the power to pursue at least a remotely ethical foreign policy. Clean house, clean the Augean stable of all these criminals that hunted you. This is the greatest comeback since the rumble in the jungle, since Muhammad Ali shuffled and flattened the big, ugly bear, George Foreman, though Kamala Harris will never make a living selling barbecue sets after this. Matter of fact, she can go back to finally working in McDonald's, where she never worked all along. She can go back to being an Indian. She can drop her kaleidoscope of accents. A Southern belle here, down with the kids in the ghetto there. She can stop pretending all the identity politics mess that she has draped herself in throughout her career and throughout this electoral campaign. This comeback of yours, Donald Trump, gives you an enormous mandate. And you can't run again. You don't need to do anything to please these special interests, these lobbyists that will now be swarming around you, as earlier they were swarming to destroy you. President Trump, you have 4 years to make America genuinely shining city on a hill. You'll be greatly helped by the mass exodus of all of those that promised they were leaving the country. Bono was going to leave life. He's going to drive a car off a cliff. Hundreds are gathering at cliff tops all over the country, waiting for him to show up and keep his promise. Tom Hanks is going to take a one-way ticket to Canada. Me and Gayatri are on our way to America in January. Maybe we'll live there for a little while. Make America the freest country in the world. Heaven knows that actually won't be that difficult. It might be easier for me to live in America and work in America. Imagine that. Starmer, Macron, Schultz, Baerbock. You're not the leaders of the free world. You're the leaders of the imprisoned world. The imprisoned people of Western European countries are going to rise up like the American working class has just risen up. You are going to be swept away. And while we wait for that, thanks to Trump and Carlson and Musk and those who at least recognize the meaning of the First Amendment and why it is the First Amendment, because all other freedoms depend upon the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Take a bow, Elon Musk. This would not have happened if you had not liberated Twitter from the CIA, FBI, DOJ, White House nexus, which controlled it with a fist around its neck. It is true that Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, Max Blumenthal, Gerald Celente, me, the mother of all talk shows, we are the media now. All these discredited, weeping husks that you see literally wearing black in mourning today on the American television show The View. Some of them literally weeping on camera. They didn't get their way. They're not used to that. They're used to being able to terrorize the rest of us into silence and compliance. They are used to being able to insist. Well, in the early hours of this morning, they got their comeuppance. I was up for Pennsylvania. Were you? As a matter of fact, I haven't yet been to bed. So if I seem unduly light-hearted, unduly light-minded even. It's because I have just watched the worst people on the earth, the worst people on the earth, having to eat their bitter but just desserts. It is the mother of all talk shows. You want to stay tuned. I'll be right back.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Well, whoever else is running the American government, it ain't Joe Biden, and presumably it ain't now Kamala Harris. So who is running America? And what will they do with that power over the next 2 months? Because that's how long they still have to be in power. If a week's a long time in politics, 2 months in the middle of multiple potential World War IIIs is a very long time indeed. Is Biden's government now run by the deep state? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X, my Twitter. You can vote on the YouTube community poll, and you can vote on the YouTube stream. I'm almost at 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. Please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It costs absolutely nothing. But that press of a button, getting me to 500,000, will algorithmically help me a very great deal. Please do it. And please follow me on Twitter if you have not done so. I'm almost at 750,000 followers there. Only 4,000 still to go. Please follow me on Twitter. Follow the show on the YouTube. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the UK and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. My good friend, Gerald Celente, is the Trends Journal publisher and founder of Trends Research Institute, and a man who reads the runes, and usually very, very perspicaciously. Gerald Celente, very welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. I want to ask a question that has just occurred to me. First up, Kamala Harris got 15 million votes fewer than Joe Biden got just 4 years ago. Where did these 15 million votes go? Or is it the case that they never existed in the first place? Call me suspicious, but I have always believed that the 2020 election was rigged. It's not of any significance now, but it is a historical curiosity, is it not?
I believe it was rigged too. I want to make this clear. I'm a political atheist. We look at things the way they are, not the way we want them to be. And by the way, I called it wrong. I thought Harris was going to win. But before I go into that, I definitely think I know it was rigged. I was on a show on election eve in 2020, and they had all the charts coming in. and Trump was leading all over. Then all of a sudden, like 120,000 mail-in ballots come in, like in Wisconsin or Michigan, and Biden got all of them and Trump didn't get any. I said, what are you kidding? 120, you didn't get any? So I definitely think it was rigged. This election, I thought Harris would win.
And
I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on. No, you go on.
I thought Harris would win because of the midterm elections, that Biden was weighed down in the polls. The economy, inflation was skyrocketing. But they did lousy, the Republicans, in the midterm elections because of one issue, abortion. And I believe that Harris, and you see all the ads that were coming out, it was pro-abortion. Again, not what you want, what you wish, what you like, but I'm just saying what it was. And then you look at the data, and 67% of Americans are pro-abortion. So I thought she was going to get a lot of the women vote, a vast majority. She was going to get the black vote and the Latino vote. The black vote went down, and the Latino vote, more of them guys went for Trump. So the bottom line is, I was listening to you, and you really nailed it. The people are tired of this woke mentality. They're tired of being told what to do. And very important, who's running it? All the Biden administration was Obama 2.0. And that's all Harris was. This is the end of the Obama administration. This is going to be the time for a new Democratic Party that used to represent the old Democratic Party, but it changed when Bill Clinton came in. They called him the New Democrat. Oh, he's the guy that sucked our jobs out of America and brought NAFTA to send them to Mexico. Oh, he's the guy that did away with the Glass-Steagall Act so the big banksters could get bigger. Oh, he's the guy that did away with the Federal Communications Act in 1996 that allowed 6 companies to own 92% of the American media, when there were thousands of independent radio shows, TV stations, and newspapers, all gone. This is the Bill Clinton that brought China into the World Trade Organization and manufacturing sucked out of the country. So now what you have is the middle class in America is dying, and Trump promised to bring it back. And he is representing a revolution of thought in America. So this is a big one. And again, I thought she'd win. And this is important too. According to the data, the polls, only 4% of the people are concerned about global issues.
I felt that listening to a lot of the Vox Pops last night, through the night. Nobody was talking even about Ukraine, about Gaza, never mind global issues. They were all talking about the economy is stupid. Clinton got that right, didn't he? That if the government is presiding over an economy where, there you go, where you don't have...
There's a T-shirt that I did in 1992 when Clinton ran. Beware of Slick Willie. 1992.
Yes, Slick Willie, he turned out to be indeed. Now, Gerald, the question is now, will Trump deliver? Will, for example, RFK Jr. be allowed to make America healthy again, which will come at the cost of the vast profits of Big Pharma? Will he reopen the JFK, RFK assassination files? Will he release the Epstein client list? Will he make sure that jobs come back to America? Will he live up to the expectation of the millions of people that voted for him? What's your view?
On the RFK Jr., yes, I believe he will give him a lot of freedom to do what he wants to do. And that's why, he came into the club, and he wouldn't have done it without it. And I've spoken to RFK Jr. twice, so I think that is he'll do that. On the issue of releasing the JFK papers, Judge Napolitano, who I do a podcast with every Wednesday, and we're very good friends, he spoke to Trump, and you could listen to Napolitano say it, when he was supposed to release the papers back when he was president. And he said to Judge Napolitano, and Napolitano said, how come you didn't release the papers? You said you were going to do it. This isn't exactly what he said, but words to the effect. He said, Judge, if I released what I've seen, it would be a catastrophe, or words to that effect. But now that RFK Jr. is there, he may release them. On the Epstein files, no, because there's also talk about Trump. That was one of his good friends. So you don't know what's going on with that either. So I don't think on the Epstein they're going to release it. And I also think that Trump is going to end the Ukraine war by not giving any more money to Ukraine, and it's going to wind down. But I'm concerned that Ukraine will do a false flag event, like blow up a nuclear, something will happen that will get America back into it. But on the Israel war side, that's a toss-up, because he got $100 million from Sheldon Adelson, and he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and told the Israelis, that land you stole over there in the Golan Heights, it's yours. And then Sheldon Adelson's wife gave him another $100 million. So I don't know what his position is going to be with the genocidal war going on in front of everybody's eyes. And again, that most Americans care less about.
Well, let's break them down, Gerald, because most Americans couldn't care less about them, but the rest of the world cares a very great deal, and I know that you do, and you know that I do. If it's the Trump that closed his campaign in Michigan, running on peace in Gaza, peace in Lebanon, warning that this war better be over by the time he comes to power on January 20th, if it's that Donald Trump, and bear in mind, he doesn't have to run again, Gerald. Bear in mind also that 70% of American Jewish voters voted for Kamala Harris. I mean, there's an extraordinary extent to which the Republican Party chases endlessly after votes that are never coming their way. Could there be an unexpected turn in Trump's attitude to the genocide and to the invasion of Lebanon?
It will depend on who he brings in his cabinet. If he brings in guys like Pompeo and that Cotton guy, that jerk, is a senator, if he brings those neocons in, it'll only make a bad situation worse. If he brings in somebody like Colonel Douglas McGregor, then it'll go in the right lane of peace. But it's also important to see what Trump has also said about, that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, had a talk at Harvard University, wrote about it in detail in the Trends Journal as it was happening, that land in Gaza is very valuable waterfront property. This is his son-in-law. And that we should move the Palestinians into the Negev desert. And then listen to Trump, too, when he said when the Iranian-Israeli conflict kept ramping up, Trump said, they should bomb their oil facilities and their nuclear facilities. And this is the Trump that got rid of Soleimani. So I don't know what side of the mouth he's talking from, but there's both sides, the one that you said and the one that I said. So it's going to depend on who he brings in, because he brought in, look what he brought in, the first guy, Mad Dog Mattis, a former general. Isn't that a nice name, Mad Dog? The guy that loved to kill people?
The clue was in the name.
What's that?
The clue was in the name.
Yeah. So again, it's going to depend who he brings in. But as you point out, if he brings in and he may also, I've heard, bring in Dennis Kucinich, who was RFK Jr.'s campaign manager. And he's very pro-peace. Matter of fact, when I had my Peace and Freedom rally last year, Kucinich spoke here. And he was, again, the campaign manager. So if Trump brings those kind of people into his cabinet, this could be the America that he promises to make great again.
Well, the big enchilada is the Ukraine war. The reason why I'm very happy that Harris lost, without being happy that Trump won, I'm very, very ecstatically happy that Harris lost, is because we might have been heading for World War III in the Ukraine. And now, almost certainly, we will not be. If Trump responds, if Putin responds to this historic opportunity now, how quickly can we see an end to this conflict?
I think we could see it even before he becomes president. There's a possibility of that as well. And again, he's totally opposed to it. And again, you know, we wrote about this. It's in the Trends Journal. This is back in 2014. This is the cover. You can see how happy this guy is. This is from Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. Washington is driving the world to the final war. Remember, it's 2014. Ukraine presented the perfect opportunity for Washington to advance on and on and on. It was the Obama administration that overthrew the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine. People forget about this. They have no idea about it. I don't think Trump had very good relations with Putin. And I really believe that Trump is going to end the Ukraine war. And it's going to end very simply by not giving him any more money for weapons or any weapons. And you're seeing what's going on. You mentioned that little clown boy over there and the clown girl, Baerbock and Schultz. Germany's like one of the only countries that are giving him any money anymore. And they also gave him, another $50 billion of stolen money from Russia they took to give to Ukraine. That game is over. So I think this is the beginning of the end of the Ukraine war. However, what I'm saying is watch out for a major false flag event that will suck the people back into believing we have to be in that war. They're going to do something. That guy's not going to go down that Zelensky easily. They're going to do everything they can to keep this thing going.
Well, Zelensky might well be on the lookout for beachfront property. He might be out by Christmas. The war might be over by Christmas. In which case, these European leaders, that some of whom you mentioned there, who have beggared their own people, who have destroyed their own economies in pursuit of genocide Joe Biden and Holocaust Harris's war policies, are going to be left, as we say here, up the creek without a paddle, because they can't fight Russia without America. And if America no longer wants to fight Russia, the Europeans can't fight them either. They are in deep doo-doo now, Gerald.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. And again, Trump is not pro-NATO either. You know, and again, neither were our founding fathers. Of course, not NATO, but George Washington's farewell address. You know, this is a real man that fought, not like these little boys that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag that loved war. He tells America, don't love a nation or hate a nation. If you do, you become a slave to them. You should not be involved in these wars that have been going on for centuries. It's none of our business. And I think Trump has that belief as well. Again, my only concern with Trump on the war front is the Israel war, because you just saw what happened yesterday with Netanyahu firing Gallant. And Netanyahu's going to do everything he can to stay in power. And the way he stays in power, when all else fails, they take you to war. And that's my concern.
A military coup in Tel Aviv is what we need, Gerald. Thank you very much indeed. Gerald Celente, the sage of the Trends Journal, founder of the Trends Research Institute. Thanks for joining us, as always. Now, after a quick break, it's your calls all the way to the hour. Stay tuned.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Fisher says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
I keep talking on here about the inverted reality that we now inhabit, where liberals are in favour of authoritarian, tyrannical clampdowns on freedom of speech, where liberals love the three-letter agencies, where liberals love war, love NATO, love the European Union, whilst it's the people that used to be called right-wing reactionaries. If any opposition to these things is visible, it's visible there. But one other inversion is this. In the time of Jack Kennedy, the Democratic Party styled itself, at least, as the party of peace. Now it's the party of war. It styled itself, at least, as the party of the blue-collar, union labor, working-class people of America. Now it is the party of Wall Street and Big Pharma and the military-industrial complex. It used to be the underdog in election spending. Kamala Harris outspent Donald Trump by almost 3-1 over the summer. 3-1. All the big corporations, all big media, all big pharma, all big MIC, all deep state were for Kamala Harris. A bit like Brexit, you know. This moment feels a bit like Brexit to me. Whether you like Brexit or you didn't like it, you knew that the establishment were all one way against it, and you gave it to them right up there, Jaxie. Is Biden's government now run by the deep state, yes or no? It's your turn to have your say. You can vote on Telegram, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X. Please follow me on X. You can vote on the YouTube community poll and on the YouTube stream. Please subscribe to the channel. Phone calls, +1 844 944 3344 in the US and Canada, 08081 965522 in the UK and Ireland, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Angry is in New York. I think we better discover what he's angry about. Mr. Angry, welcome to the show.
Hello, George. My name's Angry. I'm America's anonymous English Uber driver. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I have a number of points I'd like to make in inverse chronological order, if I may. I was at Madison Square Garden last Sunday. I queued or was in line for 3.5 hours. I'm a 45-year-old white male, and no question, from what I saw with my own eyes, I was in the minority. There were Indians, Latinos, Arabs, every color, creed, culture. And for what has been billed, or what had been billed as a neo-Nazi rally, there were a surprising number of Jews, George. And I go one step further. As far as I could see, I would estimate there were almost as many women as there were men. Now, as I said, I'm America's anonymous English Uber driver, so I engage with a lot of people from all walks of life in my car. It might surprise you that overwhelmingly, the majority of my clients are Latinos, Mexican restaurant and bar staff, Venezuelan construction workers, Haitian nurses. You've talked about transmania. Try to convince a Mexican that men can give birth. You know, it's complete madness. This election, overwhelmingly, the Latinos, again, it might surprise you, the Latinos that I spoke to, what was their primary concern? Illegal immigration. Now, George, in 2020, when I spoke to Latinos in my car, with somewhat trepidation, some trepidation about the election, overwhelmingly, Latinos told me they were voting for Trump. Why? They told me they had never had so much work. Finally, George, I moved to the U.S. in the summer of 2016, prior to the first Trump election. I moved from the Middle East. And as I said, I'm a humble Uber driver, but I do live in one of the most affluent pockets of East Coast America. And the one reason that I heard from anybody, which is very few people that would admit that they were voting for Trump, what was that reason? No more foreign wars. We either don't understand why the U.S. is involved in foreign wars, or we do understand the depth of the corruption of the military-industrial complex, and we don't want to have anything to do with it. You have said, many people have said...
You're very far from a humble Uber driver, and I hope you'll become a regular caller. It's very refreshing to hear from you. I concur with all that you have said. The anti-war feeling is incoherent. It's not that people are pro-Palestinian. It's not even that they are pro-Russian or anti-Ukrainian. They're just tired of the endless drain on America's finances of foreign wars from which they benefit nothing at a time when the opportunity cost of that money is their lives, their public realm, their housing, their wages, their conditions. And it is truly bizarre. And Labour in Britain is in exactly the same position, endlessly fighting identity politics wars, calling everybody else a racist, calling everybody to the right of them, or the perceived right of them, a fascist. Donald Trump vastly increased the number of black people who voted for him. Again, 3 times he's done that. Vastly increased it again, and particularly amongst black men. He vastly increased, again, for the 3rd time, the number of Latinos who voted for him, almost to the point now of parity, again, particularly amongst Latino men. Amongst Asians and other ethnicities, like the Native Americans, for example, voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. Overwhelming. So some racist, some Nazi, some fascist that held a rally in Madison Square Garden where the majority of people, in your experience, were white. Well, the minority may have been white, but white people are totally absent from the Democratic Party's coalition. Sure, the leaders are almost always all white. The policies almost always favor rich white men. But the contempt for white working class Americans, particularly American males, is visceral. It oozes from every pore. It's written on every line on their face, in every nuance in their voice. The Democratic Party hates white working class Americans. And they're beginning now to turn on the ethnic minority groups that they thought they owned, but who have begun to vote decisively against them. The hatred against Arab Americans, for example, on social media today is palpable. The hatred of Latinos, of the blacks that abandoned the Democratic Party's camp. They forget the Democrats were the party of slavery and Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. They thought they owned these groups as client groups, but these groups have had enough of them. Labour's in the same boat here. A contempt for the very people they once existed, at least on paper, to serve. So, one last observation, if I may, Mr. Angry. You say there was a lot of Jews at Madison Square Garden, and I'm very glad to hear it. But 79% of American Jews voted for Kamala Harris. The pro-Israel lobby will very quickly begin to level their demands at Donald Trump. He should not forget that statistic. And I don't somehow believe that he will. Thank you. Call again. Now, you can scan the QR code now on the screen and leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Keep it clean. We'll read it out. As Era says, Lammy is Trump's new best friend. Watching this arse-kissing is unreal. He'll have to go. Lammy Amin Dada, your time is up. Tony Donovan sends $100 US donations for you and all around the world, screaming for peace as the sold-out war criminal DNC take it up the jacksie once again. 2016 and heinous Hillary. Love from Nick and Tony Donovan. How bizarre is that? I just used the word jacksie and it's popped up here on the screen. Marco Mata says, I love Gerald Celente. I'm a proud subscriber to the Trends Journal. I am shocked that his call didn't come true about the 2024 US elections. Well, Marco, my call came through. I'm the only person I know that predicted a complete sweep for the Republicans. Popular vote, Electoral College, Senate, and House. You tell me if you know anybody else in my position who made that call. Johannes Smithenstein says, I'm so happy we dodged the World War III bullet from Harris. I'm still skeptical of Trump, but cautiously optimistic that his pettiness will work in our favor as he gets his revenge on the deep state. Be petty, Donald. Be as petty as it's possible to be. Root them out. Drain the swamp. To coin a phrase. Eric Pachiti says, well done, George. You are a savvy political analyst. Thank you, Eric. Now, on the line from Texas is Michael. We better hear what he thinks. Go ahead, Michael.
Hello, Mr. Galloway. I heard
Hi.
you say something. Thank you. I heard you say something last week that I've been saying for years. Voting is not enough. We must organize and act. Now, with that in mind, I'm calling about something that's been frustrating me monumentally. When I see activist leaders organizing protest marches and demonstrations against injustice that only gets worse year after year, I wonder why they are not employing more of the tactics of economic protest that work much more effectively. If someone just utters those three letters, BDS, boycott, divest, sanction, you can hear Benjamin Netanyahu's knees knock from the other side of the world. Many experts and scholars have successfully used economic strategic tactics to fight injustice and taught us how to do the same. Ralph Nader has published several books on the topic. The one I have is called Breaking Through Power. It's easier than you think. Professor John Womack is an expert on labor tactics like strikes, job action, work stoppage, and how to use them effectively. A law professor at Boston University wrote a book describing how large organizations like churches and unions have used the financial clout of their investments, such as retirement funds, to force corporations and governments to do the right thing. In his book, Rules for Radicals, the great Saul Alinsky described his proxy tactic when he convinced groups and individuals to use their stock proxy ballots to vote for change to benefit the shareholders instead of the board of directors. All these strategies are legal and much more effective than marching in the streets and getting arrested, or worse, by the cops. I'm asking
that's the call of the night, Michael, and the call of many a night, and shows the scholarly erudition of the audience of the mother of all talk shows. It's not called the Global University of the Airwaves for nothing. An outstanding call. I don't disagree with a single word of it. The voting is not enough. Your slogan and mine remain true today in the wake of the election as they were before it. I believe on Israel-Palestine, for example, we have to fight for, and we haven't yet fought hard enough for it. I'm willing to bet that there are members of your family and my family, my extended family, not to mention my friends and workmates and so on, who are still not fully enforcing the boycott. We like to think we are because we talk to each other because we've got our own bubble too. But there's plenty of people still sitting in McDonald's. There's plenty of people still sitting in Starbucks. There's plenty of people still drinking Coca-Cola. Not as many as there were, but the boycott is very far from complete, and not until it is complete, building outwards concentrically, me, my family, my extended family, my neighbors, my friends, my workmates, my parishioners, co-parishioners, my co-congregationists, my co-members of this or that organization of society, building ever outwards, not until we have won a complete boycott of Israeli products, that goes without saying, but the top, and I'm always in favor of having a narrow boycott list. If you try to boycott everything, you'll end up boycotting nothing. Let's pick the big enchiladas, McDonald's, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, and so on. Let's get 5, 6 only. And everybody, not just boycott them ourselves, but make sure everybody that we know is boycotting them too. And have a picket outside their outlets in the center of town. Brilliant call, Michael. What a week it's been on the podcast, as you might expect. We've been in the top 5 in Indonesia, Oman, Egypt, and Pakistan this week. And we passed 250,000 streams on Spotify this week. So let's get it up to 500,000. Why don't we? After all, there's 4 million people viewing all or part of the mother of all talk shows now regularly every single week. So scan the QR code on the screen now. Osama is in Michigan on Palestine. Well, Osama, it happened. They discovered that you can't slaughter people and expect their relatives to vote for you, didn't they?
I mean, I don't know exactly, because I'm in the U.S., so, you know, you have just two choices. Each one is worse than the other. But I can't see a light in the end of the tunnel here. Can you tell me what do you see in this Trump winning? If there is any chance anything can change in our part in the world?
Well, there's a chance that it will change because the presidency has changed and new dynamics unleashed. There would have been absolutely no chance of any change if Kamala Harris had been re-elected. After all, they're hardly going to disavow and eschew the policy of enabling genocide and mass murder that they have been pursuing, even though it was costing them votes left, right, and centre over the last 12 months now and more. So at least there's a chance in a change. Where there's political death, there's hope. And we must fight for it. But we must drive home the message that in Michigan, at least, but also in Pennsylvania, also in Virginia, which the Democrats held, but there was a big swing against them. 250,000 Arab Americans living in the state of Virginia. That their support for Israel cost them votes and may have cost them the election. We have to drive that home because the knowledge that one is to be hanged in the morning concentrates the mind wonderfully, as the great English man of letters, Dr. Johnson, said. Well, politicians, every couple of years, have to prepare for the possibility of being hanged in the morning at the election. They've got to fear us as much as they evidently fear the Israel lobby. Thanks, Osama. Now, as I say, scan the QR code, leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Some great ones coming in. Parthanax says, George, please come to America and scold every media outlet that showed no shame or remorse. I promise you, Gayatri and I will be there early next year. We may even move there for a couple of years. Let's see about that. Mizan Zerangwe says, no one expected JillStein to win, but congrats. However, she put a good dent in the awful genocidal Dems. And Hezi Pablo says, George seemed to have overlooked some of the worst people who are in the Republican Party. For example, Lindsey Graham. Trust me, Hezi, I will never overlook Lindsey Graham, a slug who leaves a trail behind him and is just waiting for a shoe to stand on him. M. Amir says, I pray one of the first things President Trump will do is the immediate release and rehabilitation of his friend Imran Khan. I hope that too. And Joanne Nairi says, did Dr. JillStein get over 5% of the national votes? Almost certainly she did not. Okay, here are the numbers. It's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the UK and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. The worldwide number, 0044 203 966 2625. Coming up is the one and only Max Blumenthal. But first, your calls and a report from Simon from Weaponized News. Let me take a quick break. I'll be right back.
You have to remember back in 2002, 2003, there was a wish by George Bush for regime change. That's what was driving him. Nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, which of course didn't exist in Iraq. So they had to construct some sort of formula, some sort of cover story in order to persuade the British public that intervention in Iraq was right. Now, David Kelly, as an expert in weapons of mass destruction, knew that this was untrue. He knew that there were probably no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
That was a guy that could have brought down, the whole system.
I reckon you're chaff. You've been thrown up to divert our probing.
The Foreign Affairs Select Committee, that parliamentarian briefing, I think that was an indignity to him.
We saw it on the news, and my very first thought was shock. Oh my God, you know, this man is in the eye of the media hurricane. He should be protected by that at least.
You've got blood on your hands, Prime Minister. Are you going to resign over this?
I don't know the details of how Lord Hutton happened to be selected, but what was certainly the case is that he was the right kind of judge to use from the point of view of Downing Street and the intelligence services as well.
Of the 21 days of hearing, only one half of one day was spent on discussing the forensic aspects. That is disgusting.
We were given the Hutton report the day before. It was published. But actually what happened was he went too far.
The events of 2003 were disgraceful ones in this country's history, and it's unfinished business. Those responsible for an illegal war, those responsible for the death of David Kelly, have not been brought to justice. There's been no inquest into David Kelly's death. There needs to be one. We need to make sure that those who behaved in a reprehensible way in 2003 are finally brought to book.
Now, you get my films, The Killings of Tony Blair and Killing Kelly. Yes, I'm thinking about a third for the triptych in the Killing series. So you get these two films plus lots of other original content if you support me and support this show on Patreon. It is easily the easiest and most effective way that you can keep the mother of all talk shows going. Patreon.com/George Galloway. It will cost you less than the price of a cup of tea in an insalubrious cafe. I hope you'll think I'm worth it. Now, to call Max Blumenthal, as it says on my screen, an author and a journalist, is like saying Ronaldo is a footballer. Max Blumenthal is the very best there is. Author, journalist, and editor of The Grey Zone. He'll be here at 8:30. So stay tuned for Max and get your calls in. Who's next for shaving? On line 1, there seems to be a delay. It's Simon from Weaponized News with an update on the events overnight in the United States. Simon, the legend, is on the line now. Simon, go ahead.
Greeting to you, Mr. Galloway, and to your worldwide audience. So one thing that's just come out in the last hour or so is the Federal Department of Justice have announced that they are immediately, and this was unexpected, they thought they were just going to drift on until the personnel changed, but they are immediately ending their 2 federal legal cases against Donald Trump. So that's a great respite for him during his transition period. Now, we have some transition issues, and we have some day one issues, and then we have some short-term issues. And then if I may, very, very quickly, and I appreciate it sounds a lot, but I'll compare to what the Chinese and Russian and the Axis of Resistance response to this outcome. So we've got to see that there are some issues that have been kicked beyond the election day that now fall due during what they call the lame duck period, okay? So we have the dock workers' strike that was temporarily delayed. We have the debt ceiling that was completely suspended. That's allowed unlimited borrowing. And we also have the budget that at the moment is a complete hash-up that's been rolled over like quarter by quarter, which is obviously a very undesirable situation for any kind of planning. Plus, of course, Smotrich, as I had previously reported to you, had that deadline last week of the correspondent banking indemnification, and he only rolled that for 1 month to carry it into this lame duck period. And of course, Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, the US foreign minister and US defense minister, they gave Netanyahu a 30-day deadline to increase aid into Gaza. That deadline also is going to mature all during this lame duck session. So we've got to see who Trump surrounds himself with his announcement for the cabinet officers that are then going to have to go through a Senate confirmation procedure in the new year. That's obviously hugely consequential that the Republicans, it appears certain, will be controlling the chairmanship of all of those confirmation committees. That makes it much likely that he'll get the people that he has selected. But on day one, the issue then becomes, will he do what Joe Biden did, which is, in the case of 2020, when Joe Biden came in 2021 January, he signed, whilst admitting that he wasn't even sure what they said, 64 executive orders that moved around government budgets and policy priorities to a great, great extent, and cancelled some of President Trump's previous instructions. So will he undo the undoing on day one at the very same time that he says he's going to transform America's health, expel somewhere between 15 and 25 million people, which is easier said than done if you don't know what country they came from in the first place, because they destroyed their passports and refused to tell you, and you may not have a repatriation agreement with their original country. And then, of course, he's got these two major wars, and you see the reaction from the Israelis. Netanyahu was the very first world leader to reach out and congratulate Trump. They are cock-a-hoot about this situation, and they have used the distraction of the vote counting to remove the Israeli defense minister, who had been pushing back against some of the schemes of Netanyahu, move the foreign minister into the defense minister slot, and appoint his previous, now newly reconciled friend, Gideon Saar, into the post of the replacement foreign minister. So there's a lot of pieces moving there. Now, in the meantime, literally in the few days since we last spoke, you've had the Russians conducting what they called essentially a summit of the future, where Putin, in a use of a phrase about foresighting as opposed to forecasting, was looking more than 10 years into the future. The Chinese today and tomorrow are hosting the Mekong Region Summit, which is 6 countries plus them talking about their future. And the new Secretary General of Hezbollah, Mr. Naim Qassem, has given a very long and detailed speech explaining how he and the Houthis are not relying upon a Democrat or a Republican having won. They're focused intently on Netanyahu's plan to, quote, change the face of the Middle East. So that's a very, very fast synopsis of today through 10 years.
And a very valuable one. And Iran hasn't spoken yet, of course, Simon, and that may shake up the kaleidoscope rather dramatically. Thanks as always. Weaponizednews.com, a must read. John in London, why Kamala lost? Let's hear it. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, hello. Good evening, Mr. Galloway. How are you?
Good evening. By the grace of God, good. What do you want to say?
I'd like to say, first of all, anyone that could endorse Kamala Harris after her participation in the genocide, I think they're charlatans if they could claim that they're for the Palestinian people. That's the first thing I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, if you look at the vote count, I mean, we know that 15 million Democrats didn't participate in the vote. So how much of that do you think is due to the genocide in Gaza? And how many people do you think that either voted for Trump or voted a third-party candidate would have voted Democrat if they had taken a more Palestinian stance on the issue?
Well, I suspect that the answer is yes to all of your questions. There are 15 million votes missing from Joe Biden's tally just 4 years ago. Where did those 15 million go? Did those 15 million even exist in the first place? Is this further evidence of the big steal? I suspect that Trump isn't going to do much about all of that, at least not above the table. But I'm still interested in it. I'm still interested in the fact that Joe Biden, who was even then showing signs of advanced infirmity, got the biggest vote ever recorded in American political history in 2020. I am puzzled as to why, even at his height, Barack Obama only got 66 million. How could Barack Obama get 66 million and Joe Biden in 2020 get over 80 million? That does not compute to me. So I'm interested in it as a political professional from, albeit now merely an academic standpoint. But you have to say that some of that missing 15 million, 16 million must have been people who could not bring themselves to vote for Kamala Harris. Not because she's a woman of color, though that's what the sofa breakfast shows in America are trying to suggest, but because they didn't like the cut of her jib, they didn't like the cackle in her voice, they didn't like the otherworldliness of her approach, they didn't like her policies or the lack of her policies, and they didn't like her wars. The Ukraine war is a Democrat war. The Gaza war is a Democrat war. If you're against either or both of these wars, you're going to be against the Democrats. It's not rocket science. Asif is in Eastham, and he is asking about Trump and the West Bank. Go ahead, Asif.
Oh, yeah. First, before I mention that, like yourself, I'd been calling it for Trump as well, although my colleague was saying, the deep state will never let him in. Anyway, back to the poster about Trump and the West Bank. Our friend Khaleesi has put out a post saying that the Zionists have let Trump win the presidency because they think that he will annex the West Bank. Do you think he will do that?
Well, he's not in a position to annex the West Bank, and I don't think that he would support doing that. But this betrays this conspiracy mindset that so many people are trapped in, which denies agency to the people. It imbues our enemies with superhuman qualities. Let me just examine what you said there. The Zionists let Trump win. The victory was hard fought. It was fought street by street, door to door. It was in some states extremely narrow. It was a vast experience of political fighting and combat, bitter hand-to-hand combat. Nobody, let alone the Zionists, are in a position to let anybody win. The supporters of Israel control the entire US media, entirely, from A to Z, from north to south, east to west. The supporters of Israel control all of that media. All of that media was for Harris, not for Trump. They didn't let Trump win in exchange for the annexation of the West Bank. Would be an act of total illegality. If it were to happen, it will be contested on the ground by the Palestinian people. It will be contested across the Arab and Muslim world. It will be contested in the United Nations. It will be contested amongst the public in the Western countries that might otherwise be sympathetic to it. Politics is a kinetic business. It's dynamic. Yeah? What you do has an impact, has an effect. Stop seeing ourselves as passive clay that some James Bond somewhere can fashion into what he wants it to be. Thanks, Asif. Steve is still in England. I think the Americans have all gone to bed. Steve is in Cambridgeshire, wants to talk about Trump. Go ahead, Steve.
My dear fellow, I'm so grateful. Where to start? Let's start with this. Joy. Joy. Are you serious? Have you ever seen somebody, is it physically possible to open one's mouth to the extent that all dentures or teeth are visible and a gap. Oh, this is a rictus of insanity. The depths that have been plumbed in this latest debacle are you go on, spit in my face, and laugh at me while you're doing it, whilst the genocide is going on. It's just like
Well, she's not laughing now, Steve. She's not laughing. She's not speaking. She's on her way to see if McDonald's need any help in California. Steve in Cambridgeshire on Trump. Felicia Robinson says there's not going to be any chance with Trump. He's going to personally profit from the genocide. And Mystery Maverick says, at least silence of the Lammy and Kid Starver won't be whispering in the ear to get us nuked. And Ange says, UK unions are a disgrace for pumping members' money into the Red Tory party. All members should call for their union to fund the Workers' Party instead. Amen to that. DW says, imagine if Harris had won and brought Clinton and Newland back, all three of them. They might have raised Maddie Albright back from the grave, like the Witches of Eastwick. Great movie, that. Unforgettable. Jack Nicholson's Pink Raincoat. Chris Moyle says, Blinken's gone, Lammy exposed. Good result. Good indeed. Naum is in New York, who says Britain is to blame for Palestine. Let's hear why. Go ahead, sir.
George, how are you?
By the grace of God, good. What would you like to say?
I am honored to speak to you. I'm very happy to speak to you because I've been listening to you for years. And
thank you, sir.
I am talking to you from Columbus, Ohio. And
I've been there. I've spoken there. I've spoken in Columbus, Ohio, and I've spoken in Dublin, Ohio.
Yeah. It's 15 minutes far from me. What I am to say to you.
Well, I'll be back. I'll be back soon enough.
Okay, give me a call when you come back. I blame the British for 1917 Bill 4 to give the Zionist Palestine, okay? And I think they are the responsible more than anyone toward all the massacre and the terrible things happened to the Palestinians. And after the establishment of Israeli with the help of United Nations, United States joined Britain, unfortunate, and European, they want to get rid of the Zionists. They give them Palestine. And what we are watching now in Gaza is the Holocaust life, not like what happened in Europe.
Yes, and of course, everything you say about the British role in the Palestinian catastrophe or Nakba is absolutely correct. But we long ago ceased to be the main culprit in the area. That's the country where you're living now. Without endless United States financial, military, political, and diplomatic support, the apartheid state would collapse within weeks. It could not possibly sustain itself in any sense, neither economically nor militarily. So I'm afraid we share now the culpability between the two English-speaking countries on either side of the Atlantic. See you in Ohio. Now the poll is 24,643 people have voted, and overwhelmingly people think the deep state is running the United States. 98, 92, 96, 95% answer yes. You've still got time to vote, another 20 minutes or so. TJ is in Cambridgeshire on Trump and Palestine. Welcome, ma'am. What do you want to say?
Hey, George. George, it's Trump and Camilla. Okay. What I want to say, George, is I'm so happy, you know. I'm so happy that Trump pulled it off. Keep doing the great job that you're doing. But, you know, as a man of God, trust me, you got to read your Bible, man, because you see what's going on. It's all written. I'm so glad that Trump's going to be in office. But you know what? We have to buckle up because it's not going to be an easy ride. I mean, the Bible says the world is ruled by principalities and powers, and the powers are evil. This election was the not so bad against the evil, and we managed to have enough people to get motivated enough to get out and vote and keep God into this world that we're in today. And we're going to need God. For you, George, you just buckle up. I'm telling you, man, keep it going. Keep it going. You're doing a great job, but also be very, very careful, because these wicked principalities that are in this world right now, they're going after everybody that's speaking the truth, and they ain't going to stop. They tried to take Trump out. Don't think they're going to stop now. It's going to be a bumpy ride, like you say. But guess what? We keep praying and we keep pushing for the truth.
Amen, amen, TJ. Wonderful call. Yasser is in Quebec, in Canada, on Pakistan. We are the Global University of the Airwaves. Yasser, what do you want to say?
Good day, Mr. Galloway. Thanks for taking my call. I took the liberty of sharing a tweet that was sent out by a federal minister, incumbent, currently serving as federal minister in Pakistan, in this fake and fraudulent government that, as you know, have been installed by active cooperation and connivance of the USA and UK. This minister sent out a tweet denigrating, dismissing, and insulting Donald Trump after he had lost in 2020. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, especially in the US of A, American Embassy in Islamabad officially retweeted that tweet that I emailed a copy to your email account. And so they were, from their official account, retweeting insults and attacks directed at Donald Trump after he had been defeated in 2020. And it was astonishing for a lot of people, a lot of observers. And for people who do not know, it's not just embassy, it's a fortress. It's arguably the largest American embassy anywhere in the world. Apparently, it's called quasi-military base. It has its own airstrips, thousands of military personnel there. So they were not short of staff. They were not working with amateurs. They were not working with interns. This was official Twitter account of the U.S. Embassy disseminating such vile attacks directed at Trump. And the other thing I think I wanted
well,
to...
Well, I hope Trump saw it. If he hasn't seen it, I'll draw it to his attention. I need to press on, yes, sir, because time is running. Man Without Prejudice says prosecute Pelosi for insider trading. My God, she's good at the stock market. And she's just been re-elected, 83 years young. Anne Spilling says Trump is very disappointed over Netanyahu, and I think Trump's wife will have a big influence on that matter. Netanyahu's wife has already been convicted of treating staff badly and money laundering. And John O'Brien says Ursula von der Leyen is a war criminal and must be arrested for her part in the Ukraine and Gaza, Palestine, and Lebanon. What do you mean? According to Der Spiegel, Ursula von der Leyen is now the leader of the free world. You deserve her. And Jamilia Tiny Treats Ali. I almost didn't read that because I thought it said something else. I really hope Trump can stop the wars both in Gaza and Ukraine. It's been long and bad enough. And Dot Testa says Richard Medhurst at the Crown Court on the 14th of April. Turn up and show a crowd of support. So they're going to put Richard Medhurst on trial? Is that accurate? Must get further particulars on that. Now, a quick break, and then It's the Ronaldo of political journalism and broadcasting in the United States, the one and only Max Blumenthal. Up next, after this short break. Stay tuned. Well, first of all, Bob Geldof and his good friend Bono are on the other side. It wasn't for South Africa, it was for the Horn of Africa. I was involved in it at the time. That was my job at the time. And there were many differences. First of all, it was easy because of Cold War politics to take a stand on the famine in sub-Saharan Africa in 1984-85. I did so myself, but it was easy to do. There was no Ethiopian lobby smearing you as an anti-Ethiopian racist if you got involved in it. There was absolutely gale force wind of free publicity from the newspapers and the television about the famine in Africa at that time. There is zero publicity in the mainstream media about the calvary being undergone by the Palestinian people in 2024. Thirdly, the artists involved lost nothing and arguably gained much by being involved in that charitable enterprise. Artists today lining up for Palestine, like the great Eric Clapton, like the great Roger Waters, and I'm running out of names already, would not only not be benefiting from putting on a Live Aid for Palestine, their careers would be destroyed, would be brought to a shuddering halt if they did. So I'm afraid none of the conditions which made possible the Live Aid phenomenon exist over Palestine. Indeed, quite the contrary.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
At 2:17, Bono has left the former family home on Cedarwood Avenue for the final time in the direction of the cliffs of... Bono said he'd drive his car off a cliff if Donald Trump won. We're waiting to see if he is a man of his word, if he still hasn't found what he's looking for. Nathan is in Seattle on Kamala and Trump. Go ahead, Nathan.
Hey, George. I wanted to talk to some of the Bono-like people who think that voting for someone who hates us 4 years, every 4 years is going to solve our problems. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not a team. You don't vote for someone who despises you and commits genocide and expect them to change anything. I'm glad that Trump won because at least people can recognize Trump is the enemy. And it's easier to organize around Trump. People like Kamala hide behind their identity. That's been so frustrating. And it's just like out here, like people have been getting guff for celebrating Trump, which Trump is horrible. I would never vote for Trump. Democrats are worse. And that's a position I've held ever since Trump threw his hat in the ring. I've been just, frustrated. I got family who was, they started family texts trying to get people to phone bank for Kamala. They were talking about going to D.C. to celebrate her winning the presidency. And that pissed me off to no end because, she is not an ally. She is not a friend. And it's just like all of the people who took any time to vote for these people who hate you, I hope you spend equal or more time organizing your community to fight back, because they've been coming. Kamala was talking about having the most lethal military. While we have fires, we have waters being poisoned, nothing for that. All we can do is fund genocide. So it's just like, I'm glad Trump, that now they can't use Trump as a boogeyman next time. Now they're going to bring out somebody with
absolutely
an eye patch
brilliantly
and a star.
expressed. Brilliantly expressed,
just,
Nathan, in Seattle. Absolutely brilliant. Must press on. Though, John is in New York. Let's hear from John. Go ahead, John.
How you doing, George? This is John from New York.
Good.
So glad to be on the phone with you once again. And I owe you a big thank you, because based on your Trump prediction, I put $20 on that orange head and I won. So when I see you,
good for
I have
you.
to give
Good
you
for you. I hope
$10.
you went for the full sweep. I hope you went for the full sweep, because I'm sure that as a Yankee, as we call it here, the odds would have been very, very long. If I had put money on the Republicans winning the popular vote, Trump winning the presidency, and the Republicans winning the House and the Senate, I think the odds would have been very long. And yet that is exactly what I predicted. So I hope you got a good price on it, John.
Thank you, George. My question to you is one to you of a gut feeling. Kamala Harris, it seems, is going to accumulate 15 million votes less than Joe Biden 4 years ago. We know about all of the millions of mail-in ballots that were sent 4 years ago because of COVID. Did that raise an alarm in your gut about that there could have indeed been shenanigans 4 years ago?
Yeah, without any doubt at all, and I've been saying that for 4 years. I never believed that Joe Biden got over 80 million votes. That is to say 14 million votes more than Barack Obama in his pomp. I never believed that Joe Biden could possibly have garnered more votes than ever garnered by any candidate in American political history. He was already a walking corpse at the time in 2020. So I never believed it, and I think these votes last night are evidence that the 2020 election was rigged. Now, that used to get you banned off social media, get you labeled, get you algorithmically strangled. But, facts are cheels that win a ding. Facts don't change. They have to be explained. Explain to me, any of you, where the 15 million votes went missing between 2020 and last night. John, thanks for the call. Paddy is in Ireland on Trump. On you go, Paddy.
Hi, George. How are you doing? Great to speak to you. Calling from Ireland. You called it right. Anyway, George, congratulations.
Thank you.
What I was going to say, I'm not a fan of Trump, but there's some part of me that's actually enjoying all of the Democrats squirming and all of the identity politicking people squirming this morning. Because
you're right.
I think
you're right.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Paddy, Sinn Féin better wise up to what happened last night also. Don't you think? Go woke, go broke. That's the electoral calculus now.
Yeah, 100%, George. Couldn't agree more. I'm actually campaigning for Sinn Féin because I think the only alternative we have here to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil is Sinn Féin.
Me too. I want Sinn Féin to win.
Coalition of the
left. I want
left,
Sinn Féin to win, but they better wake up and smell the coffee.
Well, I think they're starting to. I think they were in a very hard place. They were trying to please everybody, and you end up pleasing nobody, and that's what happened here. They were they were trying to court that middle class vote with the identity politics, but it's backfired on them completely. But I think it was all a plan of the establishment. The establishment here, George, in case you know the
Listen,
crack here.
Paddy, I know the establishment. Trust me. I know the establishment. I've sat opposite them over 5 different decades, up close and personal. The establishment don't have a plan. They're not capable of having a plan. Let's stop treating them as if they were supermen. They are not James Bond. They are Mr. Bean. They are Austin Powers. Let's get at them. Let's beat them. Paddy in Ireland, thanks for that call. The one and only Max Blumenthal. Can't keep him waiting any longer. Max, it was quite a night, shall we say. What's your takeaway from it?
Well, sorry to keep you waiting, George. Thanks for having me on. And great to see you after the most historic election of our lifetime ever. The most important election of our lifetime, which we're now being told was probably not that important. You know, there are a lot of takeaways, and it's hard to know where to start. But what we saw last night was a major repudiation of the corporate media, which had cleared the way for Kamala Harris by first destroying Joe Biden when it appeared that he was simply too elderly to continue, too senile to continue. And they thought they could market Kamala effectively to Americans without them relating to her. It was a repudiation of the Democratic Party's leadership, which has basically been a front for the oligarchy and Wall Street, which has fixed 3 successive primary elections. They fixed the primary in 2016 against Bernie Sanders. They fixed the primary in 2020 against Bernie Sanders again, with Obama behind the curtain. And then they fixed it again against Joe Biden to give us Kamala Harris. And there was never any democracy. So it frustrated people within the Democratic Party grassroots. It was a repudiation of resistance liberalism, which emerged from the ashes of Hillary Clinton's campaign through a coalition between Hillary Clinton dead-enders and the national security state to delegitimize Donald Trump by painting him as a Russian puppet, creating this coalition between the Bush-era neocons and the Democratic Party elite. And they thought that they could roll out Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney and put that one over on people, and that we'd all forget and think that this was just about some noble Republicans putting the Constitution and principle over party, and that everybody would forget about the horrors of the Iraq War and the ruin that they caused our country. And they were repudiated as well. And it was a repudiation of the Democratic Party as a vehicle for the Israel lobby's bipartisan control over the U.S. government, because of the organization, not just of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans, but people who were so horrified by the Biden and Harris sponsored genocide and the air bridge of baby buster bombs being delivered day in and day out to Tel Aviv. And we saw in Dearborn, JillStein, I think, actually finished second over Kamala Harris, second to Donald Trump in an area that Joe Biden won in 2020. I think he won 80% of the vote there. So this is just a total repudiation for business as usual.
Go ahead, Max.
Sorry, I can't hear. Yeah, it's a total repudiation of the Democratic Party establishment, but I don't think they'll learn a damn thing from it. I think they're just going to continue with the same strategy as soon as they pick up the pieces and decide to mount another national campaign. And they really, I mean, if you talk to liberals who are crying today, having meltdowns and, you know, or posting pictures of themselves crying in the bathroom, they were out of touch and out of step with the country, with the streets, especially with young people who are getting their news from social media and who have never really received any material benefit after any election from any president, but can remember that the economy was somewhat better under Trump, was significantly better under Trump. Young people who suffered under COVID, under the lockdowns, under this whole oppressive regime that actually did nothing to stop the spread, who saw like parts of their youth be sacrificed. That issue was never talked about in this election, but they were furious. They're not offended by everything the way that elite liberals are. They have a sense of humor. Nothing has been delivered to them materially. So they have a choice between some clearly managed retail politician who is cooked up in a focus group, who had never won a single delegate before, despite running this really expensive campaign in 2020, and Donald Trump, who everyone knows, who is kind of a troll, who says some hilarious things, goes off script all the time, and pisses off all the people that young people can't stand, basically the establishment. And so they chose him, and they're not expecting him to deliver some economic miracle for them. They just chose him because the alternative was so ghastly and honestly kind of an insult to them.
He is a giant FU. He is that human Molotov cocktail that Michael Moore talked about in 2016, though not in 2024. He is unscripted. I thought his acceptance address last night was pretty exceptional. His campaigning in Michigan, for obvious self-serving reasons, was outstanding. He was lambasting the Biden-Harris administration's role in the genocide in Gaza. Which Donald Trump, therefore, will turn up on January 20? Will it be the one that turned up in 2016 with the worst creatures of the swamp sitting around the table with him? Or will it, with Elon Musk, with Tucker Carlson, with TulsiGabbard, with RFK Jr., will it be a different kind of Donald Trump, do you think?
Well, it does appear that RFK and these figures actually did benefit Trump at the polls. The New York Times now has a headline, "Populist Revolt Against Elite's Vision of the U.S." That's on the front page. And the Trump's victory changes America's sense of itself. But the populist revolt could turn into another Trump administration in which Donald Trump is continually besieged in his war room with Steve Bannon, trying to fight off lawfare attempts while national security elites dictate his foreign policy and anything positive he attempts to do. For example, what he attempted to do in Korea, uniting the Korean Peninsula, bringing peace after decades and decades of division, would boomerang because of the presence of national security elites, warmongers that he allows into his administration. So right now you have Mike Pompeo expecting to either return to the CIA, Secretary of State, maybe Secretary of Defense, to play a major role in the bureaucracy of the Trump administration, a warmonger, someone who aligns with the Christian Zionists and neoconservatives, and who spoke at Trump's final rally and touted his loyalty to Trump, to loud applause from the crowd. So he's expecting to be inside the building. So are figures possibly like Marco Rubio, little Marco, who Trump denigrated, but who now is displaying fealty to Trump and might want to be Secretary of State. Rubio is a China hardliner. He is obviously obsessed with regime change in Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, and just a Monroe Doctrine towards Latin America. And he's an ultra-Zionist. He's a major tool of the Israel lobby. Behind Trump, you have Miriam Adelson, who pledged $100 million to a pro-Trump super PAC. She's basically an Israeli intelligence asset. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, same thing, mastermind of the Abraham Accord. But then you do have the sort of populist wing that is skeptical of wars and that speaks more for Trump's hardcore base, Tucker Carlson being one example. And I think we're going to see factional division and massive infighting over the policy direction of a Trump administration. RFK is also going to vie for control over some of the agencies vis-a-vis agricultural policy, the FDA, as well as taking on big pharma, which has been sort of RFK's major cause for the last decade. So we will see enormous institutional inertia against these figures who benefited Trump at the polls and represent his base more than I think Mike Pompeo does.
Oh, for sure. Indeed, Carlson called Pompeo a criminal and called him out for his plan to murder our friend Julian Assange on the streets of London. So the coming struggle for Donald Trump will be one to watch, and I know that we'll both be watching it closely. Finally, Max, and I'm sorry we don't have more time, the one thing you can say is this is extremely bad news for little Zelensky, the crook of Kiev. His notice has been served, hasn't it?
Well, I think his goose was cooked no matter who won. The war is so clearly failing. The Biden White House has been leaking on Zelensky. For example, that he attempted to acquire Tomahawk missiles. Every week there's new leaks in U.S. media that are pouring out of the Biden administration. So I think they're fed up with this guy too. And you have a problem where Donald Trump was impeached for attempting to at least elicit some sort of trade-off for delivering offensive weapons to Ukraine. And remember, Barack Obama actually was the one who refused to give the Javelin missiles to Ukraine, refused to give the offensive weaponry because the Minsk Accords forbade that. And Donald Trump ultimately delivered that under so much pressure from the three-letter agencies and all the spooks and national security goons that had surrounded him. And then he was impeached because he wanted dirt on Hunter Biden in exchange for it. So it made it much harder for Donald Trump to actually impede all of the momentum towards the proxy war that erupted in 2022, even though he wanted to. J.D. Vance has been very outspoken, Trump's VP, about the need to cut off military aid to Ukraine and, in his words, just stop the killing, which is absolutely the right approach. So again, I'm worried that if Trump and Vance attempt to do the right thing, they will be portrayed inside the Beltway by corporate media and the national security state, what they call the deep state, as defeatists, as defeatists colluding with Russia, and it will lead to some new scandal that could actually prolong the war with the Newlandites operating in the background. That's what I'm worried about. Whereas if you had someone like Kamala Harris in there that had the backing of the national security state to slowly create an off-ramp from this war, there wouldn't have been as much noise in Washington. So we're going to have a huge clash over, I think this will be one of the biggest clashes in the next 6 months, in the 6 months after Trump enters office, over ending this failed, disastrous war and stopping the killing, which I think Ukrainians now want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great meme going around of Zelensky talking to Kamala Harris saying, now you know why we didn't have presidential elections. I know it's early yet, but speaking as someone who completely correctly predicted last night's result on air, on the mother of all talk shows, I think that J.D. Vance will be the next president. Pete Buttigieg seems to be limbering up for the Democratic nomination. What about a new generation after this one? Clearly needed, isn't it?
Well, Buttigieg would be a disastrous pick for the Democrats. And J.D. Vance seems to be waiting in the wings because there cannot be anyone nominated for a Republican presidential candidate who doesn't stand in Trump's shadow. Trump has completely taken over the Republican Party. In many ways, he transcends the Republican Party. He's sort of a party unto himself. And that's why he chose J.D. Vance as his VP pick. Not because Vance was necessarily going to be the best person on the stump, but because Vance was the person he wanted to succeed him. But for all we know, it could be Don Jr. And with the Democrats, they need a complete overhaul. It's not going to be possible. They need an ideological overhaul. They need to spit out the neocons. They need to start articulating what they actually believe in, and they themselves need a transcendent figure like Trump, who isn't just some retail politician or some sort of previously unknown figure that they try to grow in a lab, which is what Pete Buttigieg represents. I mean, what did this guy do? He was the mayor of a small city in Indiana, and they just brought him in out of nowhere because they thought he would be the next Obama, the openly gay Obama. He'd be our first gay president. People are fed up with that.
Absolutely. By the way, I saw Don Jr. Talking with Tucker Carlson in the middle of the night. He was very, very impressive. So maybe he is a possible runner too. Well, I told you he was good. Max Blumenthal is the best. Thanks for joining us, Max. Sorry we had so little time. The poll is now closed. 27,589 of you have voted. And overwhelmingly, you say the deep state is now running the United States. Now, you know about my other show, don't you? Do you want to have it out with me? Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Watch this. Join me every week to Have It Out with Galloway. We discuss the great issues of the day and occasionally the odd philosophical meandering through the meaning of life. You can be on the show by contacting us at our website, haveitoutwithgalloway.com. You can be the star of the show. Join me on Have It Out with Galloway. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Do watch it, you'll like it. Come on it, be the star of the show. Well, my good wife joins me for a very brisk social media update because we are fast running out of time. Gayatri, what's rattling?
So here I'm sat next to you with Donald Trump back in office.
Is this the tartan in honour of Donald's Scottish roots?
Maybe.
You look fantastic.
Thank you so much, Gerald. Considering the night we had, or not, because we were up the whole night watching.
How can you look like that when we haven't been to bed? It's inconceivable. Anyway.
Well, never mind me.
There's no chips tonight. We're going straight to bed right after this show. And that's not an invitation.
No, but it was incredible. And last time I was reading Matthew White's comment saying, fasten your seatbelt, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but it turned out to be not so bumpy at all. So John in Macau writes, Gigi, if you think of it, they tried to impeach him, they tried to jail him, they tried to take his money away, and because of their constant demonization, some tried to kill him. And he won. I mean, he didn't just win in those circumstances, he won the Electoral College, the popular vote, the House, the Senate, Supreme Court. This is from Tony. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. And it's right to remember it. They moved heaven and earth to destroy Donald Trump. They actually not from 2020, but from 2016.
Yes, absolutely.
They tried to destroy his presidency from the first day. The Russiagate hoax, which we're all still suffering from. Russia, the big lie that Trump was a Russian agent, absolutely destroyed his first term, certainly disabled it. And then the real fun and games began as soon as he lost. They lied, they cheated, they engaged in lawfare. They tried to destroy him. They tried to put a 78-year-old man in prison behind bars, and then they tried to kill him.
Yeah.
That's why, as I said at the beginning, not since Ali's return for the third time in the Rumble in the Jungle in Kinshasa in the Congo, Has there been a comeback like this?
Well, the funny part was the celebrities going on stage endorsing Kamala Harris. And if you think about it, what was it? It's J-Lo, it's Beyonce, it's Oprah Winfrey, George Clooney, Usher.
It's the P. Diddy crowd.
It's the P. Diddy crowd. Unbelievable.
Might not have been a good idea to have all of P. Diddy's party
Can you
crowd
believe it?
on the same stage. Might not have been the wisest thing.
No, exactly. And the most incredible thing that I heard from that platform of these celebrities was Oprah Winfrey at the last minute saying, if we vote Trump tonight, we have a very highly possibility that we will never be able to cast a vote again. What insanity is that?
Trump derangement.
Unbelievable, exactly.
And, some of the most unlikely people have got it, even in our own country. Little William Hague, Billy Hague.
Yes, I saw that. I had to double check whether it was the real William Hague.
Trump's a clear and present danger to the world. Keir Starmer sending his crack election-winning team over to help Kamala. The Keir Starmer Expeditionary Force didn't work out that well.
I love that. I love watching that as well. All those politicians who were condemning Trump, including our foreign minister David Lammy at its best.
Foreign interference.
Yes, calling him a Nazi, a KKK. Now all crawling back, trying to make up with him because he now is the new leader of the US.
Trump's got a long memory, you know.
He does. He doesn't forget. He does not forget.
As he said in that promo we used to have, like the haggis, he's thin-skinned and full of crap. But the thin-skinned bit is definitely there. And there are plenty of people around him who will make sure that he doesn't forget these people.
Yeah, we watched them yesterday at Tucker Carlson's show. It was very
good,
interesting.
Tucker's
it was very
show.
interesting.
I wonder how many views it got. Certainly a lot more than the mainstream
the legacy media.
Legacy media.
As we now call it.
We need to find a more insulting phrase than legacy media.
Okay, let's ask our audience.
Yeah, museum media or, I don't know, mausoleum media.
Speaking of asking our audience, look at this one. Bono is a complete beep. He can go to Ukraine or he could join the IDF, neoliberal tax dodger. David Marston says, I've got gas money for Bono. We're all very happy.
We're all waiting. Bono, what are you waiting for? You're a man of your word, right? Head for the cliffs. Anne Aldridge says, wonder what George's reaction will be when Trump gives Netanyahu all that he asked for. Well, like Joe Biden, you mean? Like Kamala Harris. My reaction will be to oppose it. I'm opposed to anything bad that Trump does. I will support anything good that he does. And that's the proper attitude to the leaders of foreign countries. It's not a football team, you know.
Yes.
You don't support the Democrats because of the color of shirt that they wear or because like you support Celtic or Manchester United. You have to evaluate political figures and forces according to what they do, what they stand for, and what they intend to do. That's why I am over the moon. I cannot tell you how elated. The epiphany I felt when Ali knocked out George Foreman is exactly the sense of epiphany I feel now. Even if Trump turns out to be a complete and utter waste of time and space, the moment of the crushing of the Kamala will stay with me forever. Last point from you.
Actually, people are responding to an alternative to legacy or mainstream media. Someone says zombie media, but this one from Abdullah Ibn Abdullah is very good. Instead of corporate media, it's corpse media.
Corpse media, that's the one so far. Any improvements gratefully received. Francis Stevens says Bono is a complete tosser.
That's the one I read.
Everyone hates this Bono. I suppose he's counting his money and doesn't care. Arcane Eclectic, what a lovely name. I want to see reactions from Hollywood celebrities like Taylor Swift when they found out Trump won. And last one, Gan Pignanos Gianni says, JillStein and genocide anti-military industrial complex anti-corruption and lobby groups like AIPAC. These are the kind of leaders, politicians, we need representing us. A last call, Gayatri. We're going over the odds because we don't have to go out for chips the next time we're too tired to eat them. Dr. MacDonald in Poland is the last caller. Hi. Dr. MacDonald in Poland, very nice to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yes, George. Thank you for having me on. And I've just been following all of the commentary, and then this has been a day. I can't even describe it because, yes, I'm a Kamala supporter. Not a big, it just doesn't come along color lines, but Democrat at heart. So I'm a lawyer. I'm based in Poland. I'm a Brit. And I am doing further studies, a third PhD, which I'll be looking at the 19th century and Black history. I think there are a lot of political pundits and analysts that they speak the world about defining and describing the cobwebs. What I wanted to do, in light of everything, we see some unrest in the UK. There could have been some potential flare-ups if Trump lost in the US. But we are good at describing the cobwebs. And no media outlet has been looking at the spider in the room. And the spider, it deals with woke, but it's not just what people think and make out that woke is. Black people waking up, and again, not on George Floyd, but there's a higher consciousness awakening amongst melanated people. And I am mixed race. I'm 10% white. I'm 50% Indian, East Indian. My mother's from Madras, both parents from the Caribbean. And we are so good at outlining and describing in such perfect detail the cobwebs, the metaphorical cobwebs. What about the spider in the room? We have a history that is being challenged. Sometimes we can't describe it. We can't put it into words. But melanated people are realizing that. And when Russia had the black icons, and it wasn't such a big discovery after all, because we see from the black Madonnas scattered around churches in Europe that we have melanated Madonnas, melanated Christs. And we do know the color of Christ, the Yeshua, was not white. So people are getting this higher consciousness. It's causing this rift between those that are, call it the right-wingers, you call it, the people who are in the West, the ones that belong and have their rights, and those that are termed immigrants and people who are coming over the shores for a better life. Mind you, their countries were impacted by the same, countries that are, that they're trying to get into. They went to war, so we know the history there. But what is the spider? The spider is the false sense of the history as it's written in the books. And I've been to, 9 universities. I've studied all my life to know that there's something wrong with how we describe history. For me, we know from the biblical times that we had more of a melanated people, and the population 2,000 years ago was barely 190 million. So how do you get from 190 million people, and this is fact-checked by the UN, to today at 8 billion? And we know from the CIA reports, the demographic reports from the United Nations, that we have approximately, call it 8%, at max 10% considered whites. How do we reconcile the history? It was portrayed, white Jesus, every figure seems to be white, with say, well, you're MacDonald, you must be from Africa. And when I started my genealogical journey, it was one where I was a MacDonald. I am a MacDonald, and they said, well, you must be African. But having done my DNA tracing, having done my own family tree tracing to Scotland, through the Middle East, through North Africa, having traveled to 117 countries, I realized quickly that, again, what we have read and seen in history is not accurate. I have been tipped off with the Dresden Museum of Ethnology, the Moor's quadrille painting, 1706, showing 4 black men, kings of Europe in 1706. What are these black men doing parading in Warsaw, Poland in 1706? And those kind of images, paintings, are not on public display.
Well, look, that's completely fascinating, gobsmackingly fascinating from the first minute of your call to the last. I cannot, alas, do justice to what you have said, so let's leave it hanging in the air as the audience prepares for probably an early night, certainly those who stayed up last night. And do come back on another occasion, Dr. MacDonald, because your story is indeed a fascinating one, proving, as if it needed proved, the erudition, the eloquence, the standard of education and intelligence, which are, of course, not the same thing, that our audience demonstrates on a daily basis. We had two of the best possible American guests tonight. We'll have more on Sunday. We will watch Donald Trump closely. Every move he makes, every vow he breaks, we'll be watching him. And we'll be watching what the Democrats do to deal with the shattering defeat that they have just suffered. Will they dig down and tick another identity politics box and go for a former mayor of a small city in Indiana by the name of Peter somebody? Or will they look for that transcendent figure that could rival the figure of Trump, as Max Blumenthal was just saying? Will they turn back to being the party of peace, the party of skepticism about the three-letter agencies, the party of doubt over the intentions of the military-industrial complex? Will they turn back to being a party of the people? My hunch is that it's a big no to all of those rhetorical questions. I believe that centrism, call it social democracy, is doomed because it has made a pact with the devil. The Democrats, the Labour Party in Britain, the Macronist, Blairite type development that occurred so suddenly and will disappear just as suddenly in France. The Greens and the SPD, they have betrayed their people. They have betrayed their own countries, and the people are tired of them. The future belongs to what they call populists. I've never quite understood the animus towards the term populist, because it usually means offering to give people what it is that they want, offering to allow people to live in the way that they seem to want. So arranging national state affairs and international relations that provide for the maximum harmony and happiness of the maximum number of people. The spider at the center of the web that Dr. MacDonald was talking about is not ethnicity or color, as I infer he was implying. The spider at the heart of the web is the wholly inadequate at best and entirely antithetical nature of our economic and our consequent political relationship with the world. We have a country in which a small number of people, most of them rich, but not all, some of them happy to settle for being influential rather than particularly rich, but a small elite of people bend the circumstances of the nation to their will at the vast cost of the mass of the people. In Britain, there are 4.5 million children officially living in poverty in a country of 60 million people. 4.5 million of our children are living in poverty. 9.5 million of our old age pensioners are about to go into a bitter winter, shorn even of the limited protections that we afforded them in the cold weather payments that we took away from them in order to give it to little Zelensky in Kiev. We have a foreign policy which had an overriding characteristic. We did what America told us to do. Here's the rub. America might now be telling us a different thing to do. And those politicians who made their careers, in some cases their fortunes, from being America's voice in Europe, are about to head south, metaphorically speaking. It's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you. I'm very tired now and on autopilot, but I hope you think that the show has been worth it. And if you do, come back on Sunday for the mother of all talk shows. Who knows? Iran may have spoken by then. Good night.